Yeah, that was me and my friends trying to come up with the most effective, silliest way we could to stop an intruder in their tracks. And I think we did. It was 2:30 a.m. and I was walking home from a friend's house. We had been out dancing and now I was walking home alone down a fairly deserted city street. There was one street lamp every few hundred feet or so, and it cast long shadows across the sidewalk. I pulled my jacket tighter around myself and hurried along, eager to get home and into bed. A block away from my apartment, I heard footsteps behind me. At first I didn't pay much attention, assuming it was just some other girl heading home from a night out. But then I heard them getting closer. I quickened my pace. I didn't want to get home late and wake my parents. Then I turned around and saw a man. He was maybe 30 or so, tall and thin with greasy dark hair that fell over his forehead. His eyes were wide and stared directly at me, and he was grinning from ear to ear, revealing teeth that were far too yellow and far too sharp to be healthy. He kept on grinning and didn't seem to have any intention of stopping. So I turned back around and picked up my pace. If he wanted to pass me, fine. No problem. But he didn't. Instead, he kept on grinning and stayed glued to me like an unwanted tattoo. I quickened my pace again. This wasn't normal. Why wouldn't this guy just go around me? Was he trying to intimidate me? I shook my head, refusing to let fear take hold. I walked faster, then faster still, until I was practically running. My heart pounded against my ribs and my breath hitched in my throat. As I ran, I dared another glance over my shoulder. The sight that greeted me froze the blood in my veins. The man was still there, but now he was closer, and he was still grinning. Oh God, what did he want? I didn't know how fast I was going, but suddenly my foot hit a crack in the pavement and I lost my balance and fell sprawling onto the ground. My ankle twisted beneath me and I cried out, scrambling to get away from the crack. The man loomed over me, his grin wider than ever, and I screamed. It was the most primal scream I'd ever let loose, loud and desperate and full of terror. But his grin didn't falter. He just stood there grinning at me as though I'd just told him a funny joke. That was when I noticed something odd. He wasn't breathing. There was something wrong with him. Very wrong. Then, just as suddenly as he'd appeared, he was gone. He vanished into the shadows, leaving me alone in the street with my throbbing ankle and a heart that was threatening to burst out of my chest. Shaking, I made my way home, keeping a tight hold on my pepper spray. I didn't sleep that night, of course. I spent the entire time huddled beneath my blankets, listening for any sound that might mean that he was outside my door. But dawn came and the sun rose, and he never came. The next day, I told my dad what had happened, and he drove me around the city checking every hospital to see if anyone had reported a crazy guy who looked like a homeless person. No luck. He also checked the local police stations to see if there were any reports of a man matching his description. Again, no luck. I was about to give up hope of ever finding him when my dad got a call from the police. It seems that they'd had 2 calls in the last week from women who'd had experiences with a man matching the same description. Both women had been walking home alone at night when they were approached by a man who danced erratically while grinning from ear to ear. In both cases, the man had followed the women and made them feel uncomfortable, but he'd never actually said a word to them. He'd simply followed them, keeping a disturbingly close proximity and never speaking. Both women had gotten away, though. That's when the police had begun investigating. They were now searching for the man, questioning everyone in the area and looking for witnesses. But as the days passed and the police found nothing, I began to lose hope. Maybe they'd never catch him. Maybe I'd never know what he wanted. Maybe he'd strike again. The thought of that sent shivers down my spine. What was he after? Was he just a creepy stalker, or was he something more sinister? Had he done this before? Would he do it again? I tried to put the incident behind me, focusing on my studies and spending as little time as possible outside at night. But then, one night, 4 weeks after the incident, I was out with some friends. We were celebrating our upcoming final exams with a night of dancing. And as we left the club, laughing and in high spirits, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I turned around, half expecting to see the man, but he wasn't there. I told my friends about the man who'd been following me, and they laughed. It was clearly just a figment of my imagination, a product of too many scary movies and an overactive imagination. But as the weeks went by and the exam period drew to a close, I became convinced that I was being stalked. Every time I went out at night, I felt eyes on me, watching me, waiting for me to turn around so that he could reveal himself. Then one night, as I was walking home from the library, it happened again. A man stepped out of the shadows and danced before me, grinning from ear to ear. I screamed and ran, but he was always there, just a step behind me, never speaking. always smiling. This time I didn't bother struggling. I knew that nothing would stop him. I raced towards the nearest convenience store, fumbling for my keys as I pounded on the door, praying that someone would answer. The man was close behind me, his heavy breathing on my neck, his grin inches from my face. And then the door opened and I stumbled inside, collapsing against the counter as the man slipped inside after me. I turned around to face him, my heart pounding in my chest, and I saw not a crazed killer, but a man in his early 20s with a shock of white hair, a black leather jacket, and ripped jeans. He had a silver chain through his nose and a pair of gauges in his ears. He was grinning at me, but it was a friendly grin, not a predatory one. Confused, I stared back at him, and he shrugged sheepishly. "You okay?" he asked. I blinked, stunned by his casual tone. "Are you following me?" I whispered, my voice shaking. "Following you," he echoed, furrowing his brows in confusion. "I don't know you. I don't think I've ever seen you before in my life." I stared at him, unsure what to say. He was obviously lying. I knew it. But then why was he following me? Why had he been watching me all this time? As if reading my mind, the man sighed and ran a hand through his hair. "Look, I'm sorry," he began. But before he could continue, a gruff voice boomed from behind us. "All right, that's enough, White. We talked about this. No more tricks." The man in white turned around and faced the newcomer, his shoulders slumping. "Sorry, boss," he mumbled, then turned back to me with a sheepish grin. "Sorry about that," he said. Then he was gone, vanishing out the door before either of us could say a word. Who was he? Why had he been following me? And why had he stopped suddenly? I turned to the gruff man, who was staring at me intently. "Can you help me?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Help you what?" he snapped. His eyes narrowed. "Help me find him," I whispered, gesturing towards the door. The man in white, the gruff man, followed my gaze, and his expression soft. "Ah, you saw him," he said, more to himself than to me. "I was hoping that you wouldn't." "Why?" I asked, my heart pounding. "Because," he hesitated, then sighed. "Because he's not real." "Not real," I echoed, my mind reeling. What did he mean? Was I going crazy? Was I making all this up? The gruff man shook his head. "No, you're not crazy," he said softly. "You really did see him, but he isn't real. He doesn't exist." I stared at the man in disbelief. What did he mean? Was I going insane? Was I imagining things? Was the man just a figment of my overactive imagination? The man in white was gone, vanished without a trace. And the only evidence that Edie ever existed at all was the lingering scent of stale cigarettes and the echo of his laughter in my ears. I was left with more questions than answers, wondering if I'd ever really seen him at all. So I'm curious, have you ever experienced anything similar to this? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, please remember to like it and share it with your friends. Thanks for watching.